Projection is defined as, quote, the unconscious transfer of one's own desires or emotions to another person. This past week on State of the Union, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren said the following, quote, what are the Republicans doing? They're saying, let's fight the culture wars. They have no idea on the economy other than to impose pain on American families and small businesses. That's not an idea. What they want is power for themselves, unquote. My immediate reaction to this statement was to chuckle, of course, and characterize it as, once again, projection.
But because the Democrats acted, and let's be clear, the Democrats last spring had to act alone, couldn't pick up a single Republican vote. Because the Democrats acted, we have the basics, we have the fundamentals working in this economy. And there's the difference. The Democrats are out there trying to do something. We're trying to save small businesses. We're trying to lower costs for the family who's standing there at the grocery checkout line and trying to figure out what to send back because they don't have enough money to cover. And what are the Republicans doing? They're saying, let's fight the culture wars. They have no ideas on the economy other than to impose pain on American families and small businesses. That's not an idea. What they want is they want power for themselves rather than to help the American people.
Now, folks, considering the definition I described before the clip, is this really unconscious? Is this really unconscious transfer on the part of Senator Warren? Or is it a deliberate attempt to accuse Republicans of doing the very same thing the Democrats are doing right now? So perhaps the more appropriate term here is gaslighting. Now, what are the telltale signs of gaslighting? Well, telling blatant lies, denying having said something in spite of proof otherwise, actions not matching words, and of course, projection. That's why discernment or a good bullshit radar is key when consuming political news. Do the messenger's actions match their words? Do they stand up to scrutiny? As to Senator Warren's words here, I'd say, hell no. As for raw projection, I'm seeing this everywhere lately. I mean, as conservatives, we notice it with pretty much every leftist politician. The further left they are, the more hypocritical they tend to be. It seems to me that hypocrisy creates projection. They really just can't help it. After all, who would actually want to live the life they claim as their utopian dream? No one. That's who. Anyways, what I'm really getting at is, ever since Elon Musk threatened and then purchased Twitter, what we've seen is projection on steroids. Also, it's as if the everyday bubble-wrapped leftist has no real idea what the hell the words free and or speech mean. It's really almost fascinating, but not in the same way that they misuse words like racist or sexist or homophobic, which, by the by, Elon Musk is now considered all of the above in liberal loony land. Anyways, it's almost as if over the years the powers that be have slowly redefined the term incrementally, placing qualifiers or rules wrapped around the meaning, constantly referring to hate speech and misinformation as the boogeyman. Remember, trust the science? This same manipulation was used during the Bat Stew nonsense. It was an obvious political weapon. I mean, very obvious. Well, obvious to anyone not completely brainwashed into believing all of mankind was coming to an end. These terms in unison coming out of all of the typical DC establishment news outlets, like trust the science, translation, shut up and question nothing, you peasant. And then, of course, science denier, translation, racist, redneck, Trumper. Similar to, remember, free speech is hate speech? These terms are A, meant to silence you and eliminate freedom of thought, and or B, lead others away from hearing anything that you have to say. Dissent and debate, although created this wonderful country, is not allowed, you see. Shut up and take your 7th booster, never mind that the supposed vice president has taken a menu of boosters and still contracted the virus. Oh, and our lovely and ever so intelligent vice president wants you to know that if it wasn't for the vaccine and all those boosters, she would be feeling much, much worse. So I guess for political convenience and of course face saving, we are now changing the meaning of the word vaccine as well. Okay, where was I? I got way off track there. Okay, here we are. It's almost as if over the years the powers that be have slowly redefined the term freedom of speech incrementally, placing qualifiers or rules wrapped around the meaning. This is the only way you can justify such lunacy over a man buying one of many social media sites, saying he's going to once again allow people to speak freely and openly letting them espouse their opinions on a public platform. And let me point out the brutally obvious. He's not forcing you or anyone else to participate. He's just returning one single platform to some sense of normalcy. Now, despite the general understanding of the term freedom of speech being completely manipulated for political purposes and redefined, on the other hand, the projection explosion is of course coming from the low IQ, lazy media. One particular clip that will make your blood boil with rage, followed by a strong, overwhelming feeling of terror. Well, once you realize there are people in this country dumb enough to believe this trash that actually drive very heavy vehicles at high rates of speeds around us every day. Anyways, this next clip comes by way of none other than MSNBC. Watch as this ass clown explains to the T exactly what happened before the previous presidential election. I mean, to the freaking T.
If you own all of Twitter or Facebook or what have you, you don't have to explain yourself. You don't even have to be transparent. You could secretly ban one party's candidate or all of its candidates, all of its nominees, or you could just secretly turn down the reach of their stuff and turn up the reach of something else, and the rest of us might not even find out about it till after the election.
Oh, see, if a billionaire controlled Twitter, you could rig the discourse. That's a fair point. See, the thing about owning a social media company is you could, quote, secretly ban one party's candidate. Or even scarier than that, you could, quote, secretly turn down the reach of their stuff or turn up the reach of something else, and the rest of us might not find out about it until after the election. Yeah, that's a terrifying prospect. Democracy could not withstand that. Let's hope it never happens. What is it about cable television that completely eliminates people's self-awareness? Maybe NIH should do a study on that. It seems like a legitimate health crisis. But we're being slightly unfair in that analysis. We do not mean, certainly, to suggest that it's only Democrats who favor censorship for political ends. Republican leaders support it too. In a phone call reported today by the New York Times, for example, Congressman Kevin McCarthy of California told his close friend Liz Cheney that he hoped the social media companies would censor more conservative Republicans in Congress. Donald Trump, the sitting president, had already been silenced by those companies, but McCarthy wanted the tech oligarchs to do more, to force disobedient lawmakers off the internet. Quote, can't they take their Twitter accounts away too? Those are the tape-recorded words of Congressman Kevin McCarthy, a man who in private turns out sounds like an MSNBC contributor. And yet, unless conservatives get their act together right away, Kevin McCarthy or one of his highly liberal allies like Elise Stefanik is very likely to be Speaker of the House in January. That would mean we will have a Republican Congress led by a puppet of the Democratic Party. So you wouldn't know any of this unless it was leaked. And you can start to see why the people in charge oppose transparency and fervently support censorship on both sides. Why? Because the more you know about them, the less satisfied you're likely to become with their leadership. Here's the eunuch general of CNN's Praetorian Guard warning that the peasants cannot have too much liberty.
If you get invited to something where there are no rules, where there is total freedom for everybody, do you actually want to go to that party? Or are you going to decide to stay home?
Oh, you're going to stay home. Actually, if you let people choose, you never know what they're going to do. For example, CNN just spent more than $250 million on a streaming service that in the end attracted 10,000 viewers. Right, because people had a choice, and that's not what they chose. So if you're part of a company that made a decision like that, you'd be very much in favor of squelching the competition with censorship. Because if you didn't have a monopoly, you would wither and die. People would start asking questions like, why is equity so important again? Why do we care what TV personalities look like? Shouldn't we care about what they do, what they believe, about their characters?
Some of this came by way of redstate.com. If you liked it, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment down below. There's a PayPal link in the description box, so please put $1 in the bucket on the way out the door. I'd like to thank everyone for all your donations. They're much needed and much appreciated. Now, with all that being said, we'll see you next time.
Come on, move. Move. Easy, easy.